And here comes everyone.
Hello, everybody. We're starting to let people in from the waiting room, and we're going to start in about 1 more minute.
Can you see me this time, Beverly McGill?
Yes, Beverly. Yep, we can see you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Hey, Holly. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started since it's 12:01. So welcome everyone to the Spring 2025 Autism Training Series sponsored by Aetna Better Health of Kentucky in partnership with the Kentucky Autism Training Center. My name is Andrea Polk and I am the Children's System of Care Administrator with Aetna. This is the last training in our spring series, and we appreciate your all's attendance to this one and any others that you've attended. We will be hosting a fall training in September. So we will have 4 new topics in September. So be on the lookout for a flyer with more information around that, with dates and times and training topics to come out around August. A few housekeeping items before we do get started today. Please remain on mute. Place any questions or comments in the chat, and those will be answered typically at the end of the session. This session is being recorded, and so we do want to keep confidentiality. So we will take questions after the training, and the recording has stopped, but you can use the chat feature in the meantime. We will also be sharing a link to some slides and resources in the chat for everybody. We do ask that you complete the evaluation link at the end of the training. This will also be put in the chat box. This is especially important to complete if you need a certificate of attendance for your job, a CEU, or if you are a DCBS worker or foster parent credit and are looking for credit. Please be advised that CEUs are still pending with the licensure boards at this time. So now I would like to introduce you to our presenter for today, which is Rhonda Logston, the Executive Director of Kentucky SPIN.
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm excited that we get to talk about supporting caregivers because this is very near and dear to my heart. And this is what we're all here for. So I'll kind of start off here a little bit. Now, I'd love if y'all could share in the chat where y'all are joining from and what your role is in attending today. So let me know where you're at. I'm actually here in Louisville at our main office. But I'm with Kentucky SPIN. And if you aren't familiar with us, we are a statewide nonprofit agency, Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. We're the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Kentucky and have been since 1988, since Kentucky first received one. If you're familiar with IEPs in school or Kentucky's Kentucky Early Intervention System, the IFSPs, they're funded and are under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the same federal law that funds the Parent Center in Kentucky. And so we are all, our role, it's, many people ask, well, what all do you do? Well, it's much easier to tell you what we don't do because we are all families. We are individuals with disabilities and or caregivers immediate family members of persons with disabilities helping one another. We are not attorneys. We do not individually represent families, but what we do is we empower families and individuals with disabilities to advocate for themselves. We provide peer support, training such as this throughout the state and available. Also informational resources, a couple I'll share with you today that we create and that are available for everyone. So, one of the things that I always like to do too is tell you that there is no charge for you to access those services. They are through, and for families, through the grants that we do have at Kentucky Spin that provide those services. I just want to kind of go over, this is not a train the trainers event, and to authorize you to train as an individual with your organization on the material. It's just for educational purposes, and third-party recording or streaming is strictly prohibited. And all rights are reserved. Now I've got all the disclaimers. I feel like in the world we live in today, all of our lives have to have disclaimers, right? um, but so when we look here at supporting caregivers, first of all, before we dive deep into stuff, I would like y'all to share with me in the chat what are key characteristics of someone who positively supports you in your life. It could be at your job, it could be in your personal life. What is a characteristic of someone that's a positive support in your life? And there's no right or wrong answers. Non-judgmental, caring, non-judgmental, listens, a good listener, trust, honesty. They listen and support, helpful, providing guidance and support, active listening. Oh, you get the gold star today because active listening is one of the things you'll see here in a minute on there. Boy, you all are so good. Open-minded. I can't catch them quick enough. But look at all of the wonderful, tell me what I need to hear, even if I don't like it. It is so important. And I'm so glad, Jesse, that you pointed that out because sometimes that is what we need, right? Because that helps us to grow. That helps us to face anything in our life, whether it be personally as a family or, within our careers. Voicing appreciation. Thank you. Boy, I tell you what, you all have got it all here. So, one of the things when we look at it is it looks different for everybody. Just as each one of our children are individuals and what works for one is not going to work for the other. The same goes for families. The same for you all. The things that you pointed out. And Heidi, I love you said, ask what I want and need. That's another one that's on the list here we're going to go over today. It's, what does it mean to them? Well, what would support look like for me is very different than what supports for someone in the very same situation may be, right? Like some people think that they're helping me, but sometimes it makes things worse, and people have the best intentions. And it includes the whole family. I'm a firm believer in any of you all. I should have started with this. First and foremost, I'm a sister, okay? And 3 of my siblings have disabilities from the seen to the unseen. I did forget to tell you all. See, I get so excited. I forget what I should let you know is that I also am OCD. And I am the proud foster adoptive mom to the greatest gift of my life. And I'm a huge believer in because siblings, extended family, people who are family that may not be blood related outside of my son, myself, and my brother, our family is not immediate family or extended blood related family. Our family are family friends. Those are the people in our circle. So for me to be successful, taking into consideration the supports and what my complete family looks like. And for each of us, that's very different. And so I'd love to know, what is a characteristic of a great relationship that you have with caregivers right now? Or if you're a caregiver, what is a characteristic of a relationship that you have with a provider? What's a key thing? And they may be different, trust, or some of it may be the same as what I had asked earlier. Trust and open-minded. And one of the things here is, again, always keeping in mind through all of this, all of this looks different for each person. Communication. Boy, I tell you, Tiffany, I think the world's problems can be solved with communication, or at least we can be there together to work through it. Honesty, that's huge. That's huge. Thank you all so much. So, do each of you all, whether you are a caregiver or a provider, do each of you all have one person? Think of um, a service if that you provide at your agency, or as a caregiver, an agency that serves you. Do you have at least one trusting relationship with at least one person, and that it's meaningful at that agency? If you all had to answer right now, and it's okay if it's no, right now, can you say that everybody has that? Yes, both professional and personal. That's awesome. Yes. So that's amazing. Because I can tell you, as a mom, I have had situations, I have had both scenarios. I have had it when I have had that person, that meaningful and trusted relationship at an agency, and I've had it where it's not. My outcomes, there was such a drastic in the outcomes and the success, and that's the same for every family that I've spoke to. Not that you still can't succeed if you don't, but your success is going to look a lot different. And as families, we have so many times that we have to struggle. Anytime that we can alleviate one more, or have someone, not that that person can solve everything, right? I always use the example of, because I say this, when we're talking at schools with educators, I don't care if it is the teacher or the principal at the school, or if it's the janitor, or if it's the person in the cafeteria. Is there one person that knows that child? Because what makes the difference is that if they're a priority to someone, then first of all, that is not only going to affect their success within your agency or the program that they are in, that's going to create, and looking at the future, other successes or other programs, right? Because all of us build on different things as we learn. Some of the biggest things that I've learned in life were not through successes, right? So having that is going to be critical for every child to succeed, but even more so to get through the difficult times, but also their family as well. And by taking in consideration everyone. So, what are some successful relationships? The mutual respect and value. I sit in many meetings, many different things that we work, whether it be on a statewide level, regional level, throughout the state, and I've sat at both where I was valued and when I was not valued. And even it could be that that it is said in a very nice way, but you can say things in a nice way and it still be demeaning. And I don't honestly think that anyone intentionally tries to do that, right? But we need to be intentional on that the respect we show for caregivers and the value we give them is the same as if it was one of our colleagues that we were working with, because there is a big difference there that I see. And I think it's almost, you know, it's not a conscious thing that people are doing. And I know that. But the more that we could be very intentional, the better it's going to be for everyone. Um, the strong way, and this was mentioned, the strong way communication going both ways. And one of the huge things is that whether you're a caregiver or if you are with an agency providing a service, making sure that that communication is not just when something's wrong, not just when it's something bad, right? Because that always bubbles up. But I can't tell you, you all think right now in your life, no matter what your role is in attending here, how often do people come to you and share the good, right? Do you hear that all the time or no? Y'all can let me know in the chat. Is it rare? People let you know sort of, you know, how often have you heard people share that with you? Something positive. I hear it a lot and it is rewarding. That is wonderful that you do. Well, and I think we're in a time, I think, you know, as a mom, but then in the work that I do too, I don't take the time to appreciate others, right? I'm so busy in the fix it mode, right? I'm really good at fixing things. Um, and so making ourselves be not spend more time on the proactive versus the reactive is going to help a lot. Build on strengths just like our children, we always want to concentrate on the strengths. Yes, we need so that they could be successful within the programs, successful transitioning to adulthood. We need to concentrate on the areas that they may be struggling or need assistance with. But the only way to help them with those areas is knowing their strengths and use those strengths to help them to be able to succeed. I'll give you the perfect example. My brother Grant, and some of you all on here may know Grant, the fiery redhead. Um, he has a photographic memory. Well, one of the things that's actually a skill that he has built because Grant has cerebral palsy, but he also is technically legally blind. So what most people looked at was a negative, Grant has honed and built his skill to where he can remember stuff even I don't want him to remember. But he's always the one that keeps me on track. He's very good financial money management. I look at, with myself with OCD. So there are some times that I even drive myself crazy, but my OCD and the work that I do, it actually is a huge benefit. Very detail oriented, so looking at building on those strengths. So even though it might affect me in one area, how can then we flip it and turn it to a positive, right? One of the things that Kelly that I work with always says is, she's like, Rhonda, you always see the positive, right? Well, we've got to see how we can turn that into how it could help us. Because there is no other alternative, the way I look at it. And everyone's perspective is valid. Have any of you all ever been in a situation to where you just come to a standstill, and everybody's disagreeing this and no one will budge? Has anyone ever had that in their life? Absolutely. Yes. So I'll tell you all what my mom always said, and she would mess with my brother Grant. She would say, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?" Okay. So, what is it that we're looking for? And is there a way? Because your way is not necessarily always the right way. But it might be what's right for you. It doesn't mean that you compromise what's important for you and your child or for you in the work that you do providing the service. But how can we meet in the middle where we encourage one another to advocate and caregivers to advocate, but actively listening? Are we really listening? Or are we maybe letting past things evolve, or we're afraid that they're going to lose your intent of what you feel is important? What are we looking at here, and how can we accomplish all of it to where they could be successful? One of the things, you know, acknowledging and understanding one another's needs. Everyone has needs, and it doesn't. As caregivers, we are very prideful, right? And sometimes we don't ask for help when we need to. I'm the worst example of that. Um, but understanding that sometimes it might take someone helping us to get to that point where we see and we are comfortable for asking for help, may be a step that we have to take, because a lot of things, I don't know if y'all are like me, but most everybody likes instant gratification, and with technology, everybody has different things at their fingertips, right? But building these relationships takes time, and especially building that trust. And when we look at going into the non-judgment, that's huge, because families are being judged 24/7. We don't escape it. And people may judge us and not realize they're doing it. And so that really is key. And looking at practicing the trauma informed care, a key part that I want to point out about that, especially being a foster adoptive mom myself, in a family, is that people understanding that you don't have to, it's the part of trauma informed care, that it's not your decision to judge if that was trauma or not, right? And it's not that you need to know what I went through. Obviously, we want people to feel comfortable that they can reach out and they can discuss things and get the help that they may need. But treat everybody in a trauma informed care approach, right? So we're not leaving anyone out. So keeping in mind some things that might be triggering, that how can we make sure that we're creating that environment, because you'll never get that successful relationship if the caregivers or the children or youth don't have someone that is keeping that trauma in mind. And that it's not required that it be diagnosed from a doctor trauma that they have experienced, because for many of our children, there are a lot of things that many people may not know. And so just keep in mind those things, because those are very important. So when we look at how do we involve caregivers, providing the details of the program, and I know a lot of people provide information, brochures, but a lot of times as caregivers, it's overload, right? And especially if we are in a crisis, you can only take in so much information. As a family, we're having to address the most emergent need as soon as possible, right? So making sure that we understand what is the guidelines, expectations of the services, supports, because many times families may not have a clear understanding of that. And we have providers that are like, what our care teams that they're not achieving their goals. They're not doing this or not doing that. Well, let's take a step back and make sure that they understand the process and their role that they play in that and the services and supports, and give regular updates. A lot of times, because I know within different systems, whether it's education, medical, everybody has their own set of terminology. And especially if you are a parent or a caregiver or an individual with a disability, being able to have sort of that roadmap to understand those things is going to be very important. Again, highlighting the family strengths. I'll share with you one story that so there's 5 of us kids, and my mom we had we were poor but prideful, right? We're not rich right now, but so everybody would always judge and would be very negative to mom and very judgmental. And there, of course, were people starting from a very young age because of Grant's medical needs, coming in and out of the house and constantly. There was one man, and this meant something to my mom her entire life and does to me in my life since she shared. She said, he comes in and he always finds something positive to say. She said, I know that the house we lived in, we like to froze to death. You know, the wood, anybody knows and's familiar with the old wood stove. If you're in the, the old wood one, stove that sticks out, if you're in that one room right next to it, you about burn up. But then, you know, and the house was in bad shape. She said, I know there were times he had to look so hard to find something, but he always did. That right there, just that, you didn't even really have to do a lot. That one moment of someone and a constant that said something positive to her made a world of difference. And it not only helped her, it showed us as kids that, because the kids see you all, we're all very perceptive, right? And our kids see too, because I know most of the times when we would have to go in, there would be the whole slew of us, because I know they'd be like, there comes those Loxtons again. And the whole slew of us coming through. And you could tell that even though we would work and try to behave so well, right? We were kids. You could tell just on everybody's face how much they dreaded that it was us. So those type of experiences, and I really, you know, as an adult, I try to look at it. I don't know that people intentionally knew those feelings that they gave away, but just in the manner that you treat, the manner, your facial expressions. But that meant the world that she had one person outside of herself that saw the potential in her children and in what she was doing. And that will make a huge difference. Providing a comfortable, welcoming environment, open dialogue. Many times when you're a family coming in, it's almost like, because there's such a, not that anyone intentionally means to do it, but there is an imbalance in the authority, right? We're the one with the program. We're the one that can give you access. We're the one that you need this, right? So when there is something that a caregiver needs from you, they're already at a disadvantage. It's the same for our children and our families. So how do we level that out to where we're equal, right? It's not you and us. So looking at those opportunities, and we have so many, and I know on here, so many of you all that are so wonderful and very intentional, but in just our ways, when you are working with families or sharing, You are modeling the behavior, just like we want to model the behavior we want our children to do. You are modeling the behavior for the family. You're modeling the behavior for your colleagues. And so that's how we can spread that good and help build those relationships. Use of technology. You know, we're a very small nonprofit, and a lot of us, we all know there's not enough money for anything, right? And anymore now, um, there's no telling what's going to happen, right? So use technology. We have access to stuff that we've never had before and for free, right? Or very little cost. For families, this is the same. Keeping in touch. I know that if you are a provider providing a service that and a caregiver too, you don't have there's no extra time, right? At all. And as soon as you think you might get a few minutes, then you are sadly mistaken if your life's like mine. Um, so, one of the things, how do we build those relationships, right? When none of us have time to spare? Use your technology, send an email, send something kind, you know, and I need to be a lot more intentional in my professional and my personal life, sharing the good, right? How can we do it? It's not just when we see one another. How can we be intentional in our messages? It's also a way to send those updates. Share the positive, look at the strengths. Here's what we're working on, and here is our progress from last time, and maybe some things that we need to work on between now and the next time we meet or the next time we talk. Thinking outside the box. This is huge because I've never fit in a box. And I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, but looking at how you make it individualized for the caregivers and for the children, and looking at a lot of the work we do and through different programs, whether it be care plans or in any situation, people are working and individualizing it for the child, but the work with the family, it's not individualized. And again, that's looking at what do you want, what do you need, and having that shared with you. So, what kinds of information or resources can you share with families? It doesn't mean you have to be the one to provide it. We've got just right now Aetna and Kentucky Autism Training Center and Kentucky Spin. We are wealths of knowledge and resources and trainings that are available. Sharing that with others. It doesn't mean we're adding more onto your plate, that you have to do this or do that. There's already wonderful people that are doing that. Share that with others, because I can't tell you how many times we're going on 38 years being around. But every day, the more people that we get the word out to, the more people I hear never knew about us. And so all of our partnership together is sharing the resources. Again, ask what they need or want. As a mom and as a sister, sometimes I think I know exactly what's best and what they want. It may be the total opposite of what they want at all. Now, I might have had the best intentions, but being very intentional, and you all had mentioned it too, that what is it that we want and what we need. Now, when we look at what we like to do, you know, what are the things that caregivers like you to know? That we do want our child to succeed and be successful. Sometimes that I see there's like a lot of times people will say, and especially for children and youth with disabilities, it seems like we go to one spectrum to the other. Yes, many providers will say that that parent is not realistic. They need to come to terms with stuff. Well, you know, it's not really your place. And as a parent, just because my child has a disability does not mean that they can't accomplish great things. or we should limit them. Then on the other hand, I see, if we go to the complete other end, I will hear providers say that parent is not expecting enough of them. So again, we bring in that judgment aspect. So how can we balance that? So if we're looking at it as, you know, so that you know that we do want what's best for our child, collaboration is important to us. But if those barriers of that judgment, and not having that relationship, those can hinder any of our progress. The individualization, avoiding over identifying. One thing that families share, and I've seen it over and over, I've seen it in our own lives as a family, is that it's almost like if you share the disability or you seek the help, then it's almost, whether even if it's not intentional, used against you, right? And there is that fear too, that very real fear for families, which is another barrier that comes up, is we need to keep it in mind so that we can accommodate, so they can be successful, but we don't want to put them in a box because they have this disability. They can only do or achieve this, or, there's got to be a balance with it. And many families, when it is the unseen disability, hesitate sharing, which it is their decision to self-disclose, hesitate disclosing because of that very real fear. Now, understanding the laws and the rights, depending upon what system that you are in, each one has their own set of guidelines, has their own procedures. So what is important though is many times the barriers is all of the providers and the professionals have been handed the roadmap, but everyone's expecting me to be successful and my child to be successful, but no one's shared that roadmap with me. And so when I ask for the policies, procedures, or the guidelines, so that I know it, people get defensive. So think of it like this. You've got to give your families the same roadmap you've been given, because you're never going to have where it is equal in that partnership if they're not provided with the same information. And the disability doesn't end after completing your program. There are continued things that to take into consideration that might be very important, that you take into consideration while they're being served, but also those implications and the things that might affect them and services they may need beyond when they complete your program. And so what would caregivers like you to do? Well, in plain language, make it to where all of us can understand, right? So provide that and sometimes I know it's very hard because everything has legalities to, and the terminology, but there's a way to explain things. And sometimes, which we'll talk about here in a minute, is handing a piece of paper that explains it. It's everybody learns different. So it may need to be in a more accessible format. Aid them in understanding it. Again, with the periodic updates, connect them to learning opportunities. This is huge. Reduce the amount of surprises. How many on here of you all love surprises in general? Only the good ones. Thank you, Holly. That's what that's what I was going for. Like, really, I prefer agreed. I prefer with my OCD and anxiety, even good ones sometimes can knock me off kilter because I'm not expecting it. Okay, Jesse, I'm right there with you because I need to prepare myself. Right. And so many people do not think of the amount of surprises. So it might to you just, I love looking forward to things. That is a great way to put it. Um, the thing to keep in mind is anytime that we can step them into it. I always, like with my son, before, we always got in the habit, and I would remind him several days for stuff, right? There's so many things, especially that you can't prepare for, right? Um, but anytime that you can, let's do that as a provider and serving the caregivers and the families, because they may already struggle and have trauma, that that those surprises that someone else may not find difficult are even amplified by 100. So my son and I always would remind him several days ahead of time. I've got to be out of town with work, and I'll leave at this time, just so that I prepared him ahead of time that I'm doing this. It's going to be a little different, but I'm doing this. And I would even start, and I still do it out of habit, with, my brother and my son and all of us. When we're talking about things, I start about a week out, right? And I'll say, and a lot of it too is trying to help myself remember, honestly, what I have agreed to and what I'm doing. But we start then. And is anyone else familiar with their had their kid or someone say, it could even be someone you work with or in your personal life, you never told me that, right? I can't tell you how many times I got that. I'm like, okay, I told you last Wednesday, I told you on Saturday, I told you on Monday that I was about Wednesday, I told you, Tuesday, and then, in the Wednesday too. So little things, and not to nag, and not that it's your job as a provider to remind all of those times, but figuring out what works, like caregivers. Those are some key things, individualizing, that families may do, and actually working with the families, having the families share that with you, especially if I was working with a provider and with my son, that would be something very critical as a parent, to share with others while they're serving him, right? Because that's sort of a key thing that's going to help him be successful. Now, yes, he may say several different times, well, you never told me, but working towards that, and show the courtesies that you would show, again, your colleagues, or that you want to be shown, because many times, the same courtesies are not being shown. And as families, we need to show the same courtesy to providers that we expect to be shown, right? So it all goes both ways. There isn't a one way here, right? That successful relationship has to be both ways. Avoid assumptions, right? Just because we may have a certain disability doesn't mean that we can't fully participate. It may look very different, but it still doesn't mean that you can't do it. And never assume that caregivers don't have knowledge or understanding that would be meaningful to their success, right? It may not be the same knowledge we have, which we don't need duplicate knowledge, right? That's the wonderful thing about partnership, and collaborating. We all bring different perspectives. And I hear all the time, and I continue to, and especially right now, as the behaviors that our children and our youth are experiencing, that it's a bad kid, that it's a bad caregiver, that caregiver, this is all the caregiver's fault. Well, a part of me wants to be, you have no idea what our life 24/7 looks like. And almost in some situations, the way some people have been, please come if you can do it better. If you can do it better. I'm at the point in my life, looking at, again, there are those judgments that people may have. But avoid the cultural assumptions too, is that, we need to be very mindful of the trauma informed care, cultural bias, all of these things, because those do have meaningful impact for the family and the child's success. I would love for y'all to share with me in the chat, what does accessibility mean to you? Having access to something. Yes. And there's no right or wrong answers here. So one of the things too that a lot of people automatically make it easy to obtain, absolutely, being able to easily accessing or allowing others access to you. That's very true. Love that perspective. Someone to discuss resources that could better fit the family. Absolutely. Fitting into my schedule. Oh Lord, that is the truth. Being available. Yeah. Can I get there? Do I need transportation? Absolutely, because a lot of it people do not consider available to everyone. Absolutely. People do not consider, is there a way? And accessibility is not just related to someone with a disability, right? Accessibility plays a huge part for persons with disabilities, and even more so outside of non-disabled persons. But most people think a lot of the times that is physical accessibility. Do they have a ramp? Which these are things are important. Trust me, my brother uses a power wheelchair. Those are critical because if he can't access the building, that is critical for his success. But I will tell you, by far, the most inaccessible thing in Grant's life from childhood now to where we are both much older now is the way people treat Grant. And also his vision. Most everybody wants to assume that any barriers he has in regards to accessibility is because of his cerebral palsy, his physical disability. That's not it. Yes, there are things that we do and how to access, but that is not the thing that creates the most barrier. It is how people treat him and also his vision. Because if you are a person who is visually impaired or blind or deaf or hard of hearing, the accessibility, people don't understand the level of intensity and non-accessible things are to you. And so those by far, but people who haven't lived it don't understand it, right? And we don't expect you to know everything. That's the wonderful thing about all of us is we all have different experiences. And one of the things, excuse me, one of the things that I'd love to make sure that we concentrate here, because I know we are getting close on time, but 1 in 3 adults in Kentucky, according to the CDC, has a disability in Kentucky. We have even a larger amount because the national average is 1 in 4 adults. So it is, as caregivers, when you have a child or a youth who has a disability, a diagnosis, it is very hard to get accommodations many times for them, to get people to understand the disability, but also to work with them. Parents, most times, are not even considered in that equation, right? All of the work in providing services is about the child or the youth receiving the services. But if through your program and family engagement, because we know regardless of your program, family engagement equals success, right? is have we even took into consideration and asked the parent if they have a disability, or because it is their option to self-disclose. Now, I'll tell you, just like many times families hesitate sharing that the child has a disability, parents also do too. Many parents have had very bad experiences from when they were little and growing up. So it is their option to disclose the disability or not. But in most scenarios, no one is taken into consideration if they have a disability, and is our program accessible to them the same as it is to their non-disabled peers, other caregivers. And so that's very critical. So are we having our meetings or events where they're accessible? One of the things in the chat was, are we considering transportation, right? That would be an accessibility thing, especially if we have something at night that we want families to go to, but the parent happens to use a power wheelchair. Well, most times if you live, which this is very rare, unless you were in a bigger city in Kentucky, transportation for non-medical stuff for a person with a disability where you need a lift van or the bus may not be accessible at that time. Are we given alternative ways to participate, right? To contribute, to attend things? Do we send periodic updates? Are there different methods that we use? Looking at the accessibility when it has to do with the materials that we offer, the plan of care, is it in an easy to understand format? Do we also offer someone to explain it verbally? Are there different things out there that may be short video versions? A lot of the resources that we create at Kentucky Spin, it's an infographic, but then we do short video versions of that because everybody learns different. So are we looking at that? English learners, is it in their native language? Communication, ask parents how they prefer to communicate. Because for me, email is the best. Most everybody wants to text, but if it's important stuff, I need it sent to my email because I can't concentrate on all these all these different methods everybody's using. So if you have the option, again, I understand that there are constraints within systems. I get that 100%. Anywhere there are availability of options, have it. Just like our children do much better if they have options, so will our caregivers. And so, caregivers know their child best. They have a wealth of knowledge, and they don't have all the information that they need, just like you don't. But when we put it together, that's what then gets us on that track and with that relationship to where the child is going to succeed. So when we look at effective resources, what does the caregiver need? Have you asked them, what do they want? Will it help them? Have we considered, does the resource exist? Is it accessible? Another thing is, I'll use the perfect example, the Medicaid waivers that are out there. It exists. You can, but there's such a waiting list for the different Medicaid waivers. So that's not going to solve my immediate needs that my child needs or youth needs. So yes, it's important to get on that waiting list for the future, but is it accessible to where I'm going to be able to access it shortly? As well as accessible, like just keep that in mind, because a lot of times people think, well, it was accessible, I can download it, the application, and apply. But we're not really fixing the thing and looking at a plan of care if we're not considering the factors of waiting lists. Can it even be a service that can be accessed in my area of the state? And for children with disabilities, diagnosed with disabilities, and also may have co-occurring mental health concerns, behavioral health concerns, There are very few people in the state that you can get those needs met. You can get those services. In fact, many are have to look out of state to access those. And is that really even feasible? Right? Um, so accessing and using it, applying, understanding the process. So I always think of resilience is so important, right? We don't want, you know, someone said to me a long time ago, so how did you become so resilient? Well, I didn't have an option. And of course, we want to build resiliency without putting people in those situations to where there is no other option. But know that our families are resilient. But also, too, just like our children are experiencing a lot of emotional, mental health, and, behavioral health concerns right now, our parents are too. We are to our limit, and empowering the parents, promoting self-care. That's also another area I'm not good at. I'm very aware of the areas that I lack in, making sure it's sustainable support. So how do we help promote it? Because a lot of times people be like, oh, well, you just need to take a break and just go away. And I'm like, okay, but that's not feasible. My brother can't be cared for. Everybody can't be cared for. But how are there ways? Someone once told me, because I used to always think only, and a lot of times only rich people would have somebody that would clean their house, right? So here's the thing, not that I have someone clean my house, but if there are ways, things that it doesn't have to be you, and parents need help seeing this. If it doesn't physically have to be you, the one that provide it, how can we alleviate in some other areas that will help, right? So it may not be, most people try to approach it from, I'm going to alleviate that you have to handle all this. Well, there may not be a feasible, accessible option for that, but there may be some other things I'm responsible for over here that's also a part of it that I could get some help from. So helping families to see that. One of the things, and I know we're getting very close. So, one of the things I like to share is because, self care looks different for everybody, right? I will tell you honestly, this first row, second down, I know a lot of people enjoy like massages, relaxing, all that. I'm going to tell you that would be the exact opposite for me. Exact opposite. That would actually send me over the edge. That's not relaxing. That's not self care. That would be like torture to me. So, keeping in mind, it's going to look different for everybody. It might be me with my, my 4-legged baby girls resting. Sometimes it is the fact of the matter, and I'm going to be honest, if you can go to the bathroom alone to go to the bathroom and nobody bother you. I just got self-care. um, so start with small steps, looking at how we make this actually something feasible for everyone. And I think not just caregivers, providers. We're all at our wits' end, right? We have so much responsibility. So encourage those steps, respite and support. Is there something there? Physical health. I'm a perfect example of the not taking care of my health, which is going to make it difficult for me then to care for my brother. And looking at the mental and emotional health. And this is huge for families. Assist with the time management. Are there some things that you can help me to see that I might not see? Because sometimes I'm in the thick of things and it may not be as obvious. So here's just a couple of the resources, mapping out and boundaries. That's another one that is so important. As important as a provider that you have boundaries, because not everything is free game. And that's one thing I think that caregivers would like everyone to know, that just because you come into my home or you're helping me with something doesn't mean I shouldn't have boundaries, right? Families, I am very bad about setting boundaries with people, right? I give a little too much. But looking at this, how we map this out and help families. And I would love if not only caregivers, but providers, if you all would set and do this yourself, because I think we all need this right now. So here are just a couple more resources. I know I'm getting to the end here, and you can reach out to us anytime. So I know we will be finishing up here, but I've got some more resources that you all can share if you link in the PowerPoint. But please reach out to us anytime. And we always have a lot of trainings going on. But I will turn it over now to where we can have questions to Patty and Andrea.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, for that wonderful training and your experience. Just puts a whole new perspective on things as well, too. I know Heidi's going to stop the recording.